They pulled the 47th barrel of toxic waste out from under my apple trees, while Margaret Whitfield, Cream Bentley, idling, just stood there frozen in a coat worth more than my first car, watching her life go up in smoke right in front of her eyes. She'd called 911 screaming about a biological weapons lab on my property because some neighborhood kids were picking apples for crying out loud. The FBI rolled up ready to cuff a terrorist, and instead they dug up 30 years' worth of secrets the HOA had buried so deep even the devil might have blushed. The look on her face, man, it was almost poetic. She called the feds right to her own crime scene. 6 months earlier. If you'd told me I'd wind up owning the evidence that'd take down one of the dirtiest HOAs in American history, I'd have thought you were off your rocker. Back then, I was just Mason Caldwell, 38, broke from medical bills, standing in court waiting for a judge to decide if whistleblowing had ruined my life for nothing. I just exposed Monstera Corporation for poisoning water in 3 counties, and my reward was supposed to be a nice, tidy $3 million. Reality, I got 1.7 minus more legal fees than I'll ever want to see again, and this 47-acre chunk of orchard called Riverside, plus all right surface, subsurface, the whole deal. You ever see lawyers waste words? Me neither. Subsurface rights stuck in my head like a sliver. But you know what stuck even worse? Losing Sarah, my wife, 11 months gone, lymphoma, which the docs called aggressive, but nobody called it what it was. Murder by contaminated water. I was just looking for something to do with my hands. Something that didn't remind me of empty hospital rooms. Those gnarled old trees, Black Oxford, Newtown, Pippin, all tagged and tracked by someone who used to care, felt like the right kind of escape. First morning on the land, the fog was so thick it looked like the world was being remade. I'm just out there reading metal tags from the 20s when this white Bentley so shiny it could blind a crow rolls up to my busted gate. Out steps Margaret Hare, so sharp you could cut yourself just looking at her pink suit, high heels, holding an iPad like a weapon. "You must be the new owner," she says, accusation not welcome. "I'm Margaret Whitfield, president of the Valley Ridge Homeowners Association." Not a handshake in sight, just clicking those nails on her tablet. "We need to discuss your situation immediately." My situation, I'm standing on my land bought fair and square, and she's already acting like I broke in. I say, "I'm Mason Caldwell. Nice to meet you too." Sarcasm lost on her. She launches into this speech about how the HOA's been concerned about the property for decades, how they wanted it for some heritage orchard initiative. Translation: she thinks I stole something that belongs to her. The HOA has no jurisdiction here, I tell her. That earns me a smile cold enough to freeze vodka. Technically, yes, she says, but our standards and safety concerns extend to adjacent properties. She points to the trails children could be exposed to, whatever you're planning. "Lady, I'm planning to prune some trees, maybe sell apples, maybe give them away." Scandalous, I know. She starts rattling off rules. Permits environmental assessments, background checks for minors. She's just hoping I'll trip over some technicality. But the real message is in her eyes. She's used to getting her way. "We've got an $800,000, $1,000 legal fund for disputes." She purrs, "How much do you have left after all your battles?" She'd done her homework. This wasn't about rules, it was about leverage. She invites me to a community meeting Thursday night, hints at a buyout, $400,000 cash enough to start over, then drives off, leaving me alone with trees that suddenly feel like soldiers, not sanctuary. That night I found the first monitoring device, tucked into an old oak black box, EPA label, half faded, March 1994. Weird, right? Dig a little more, and I find 17 more of them all strung together, same secret designation. But when I search it up, it doesn't exist. Superfund sites don't go missing unless someone wants them missing. Instinct told me something ugly's buried here. Thursday rolls around, and I walk into that community center chandeliers and all packed with residents staring at me like I'm a virus. Margaret's at the podium with a PowerPoint called "Protecting Our Community's Future." Yeah, sure. She's painting my orchard as a biohazard, showing slides of moldy apples and sick kids saying property values will tank, and hey, here's a cash offer. Amicable resolution, right? An old man pipes up. Clarence Holloway turns out and asks what they plan to do with the land. Margaret's mask slips just enough for me to see her plan isn't about preservation, it's about profit. She asks if I want to speak. I stand up and say I'll have the soil tested by independent labs document. Every heritage tree, invite local schools to learn about sustainable farming, and push for the orchard to be registered as a protected site. The room actually stirs. Not what they expected. Margaret tries to pivot. But what if a kid gets hurt? What about pesticides? I tell her the orchard's been organic for 30 years. I've got more insurance than the HOA. Somebody even laughs. She hates that. Meeting ends awkward. Outside, Clarence catches up, gives me his card, retired investigator. Margaret's been running this place like her own kingdom, he says. She wants your land. Watch your back. I drive home feeling like I just stuck a stick in a hornet's nest. Monday morning, there's a county inspection notice taped to my gate. Health building environmental scheduled for that afternoon. No warning. Bureaucratic blitzkrieg, right? I call Clarence. They're moving fast. Inspections go down, and even the inspectors seem a little embarrassed. One of the cleanest properties we've seen, the health officer whispers. Margaret doesn't stop. 17 violation notices show up over the week mailbox. Too tall gravel, the wrong color, truck plates unsightly. All outside their jurisdiction, but fighting it means lawyer money I just don't have. At that point, I had two choices: take the cash and run, or figure out what they're hiding. So I dig. Literally. Then at the hardware store, this nervous woman slips me a flash drive and bolts. That night I open it, hundreds of documents, emails, contracts, shipping manifests, all tying the HOA to Blackstone Chemical Disposal. Latitude, longitude, toxic waste all buried right under my orchard. Margaret and her crew had been running a hazardous waste scam for 30 years. Now I'm really mad. I call Janet Rodriguez, federal prosecutor, for my old case. Janet, I need you, and bring your team. 30 years of illegal chemical dumping. HOA's behind all of it. She tells me not to move, not to tip anyone off, but we both know we don't have time. I call Clarence. You up for some midnight gardening? We dig at the coordinates from those manifests, hit a barrel 3 feet down, industrial blue rusted, leaking marked hazardous. We document everything. And then headlights Margaret's Bentley. She's furious. Tries to bluff, threaten, even bribe me $4 million cash right now. Not enough to bring my wife back, I tell her. Her phone rings. News vans are at the community center. Channel 7 just broke the story. The next morning, FBI, EPA, the whole 9 yards descend on the orchard. Hazmat suits, yellow tape everywhere the works. Reporters swarm the barrels, come up one after another. Margaret and her husband get hauled out in cuffs at high noon, broadcast live. 14 board members too. By sunset, 130 barrels are out and the victim stories start pouring in. Rare cancers, sick kids, families destroyed. Margaret had even paid to install water filters in the homes of her cronies while the rest of us drank poison. The criminal trial was brutal. The evidence, shipping logs, cover-ups, audio of Margaret herself talking about acceptable casualty rates. Jury only needed 3 hours, guilty all charges. Judge gives her 25 years, no parole. Civil case, $150 million judgment for the victims. HOA bankrupted company dissolved. My orchard gets federal Superfund cleanup, and the community finally comes together to replant what was almost lost. We plant memorial trees for every victim. Sarah's tree is a Newtown pippin, her favorite. I set up the Sarah Caldwell Foundation, start funding water tests and lawsuits for other towns fighting the same fight. Margaret lasts 3 years in prison before a stroke takes her voice. Her husband dies there too, poisoned by the chemicals he'd buried. Valley Ridge never recovers its property values but becomes a model for citizen environmental monitoring. Every kid in the neighborhood knows how to test water now. Sometimes in the quiet, I walk the rows and think about how many people died before anyone noticed the pattern. The trees that outlived Margaret's empire still stand stronger than ever. Last time I saw her was in court. She looked at me, really looked, and in her eyes I could see it. She finally understood what she'd lost and what I'd kept. Not money, not even the land, but the right to watch something grow without wondering what's poisoned beneath. That's her real punishment. The last apple I picked this season came from Sarah's tree. I took a bite. It tasted like victory and justice and a future where nobody has to fear what's buried in their backyard. Now, the sign at the orchard reads Justice Orchard. Apples grown clean since 2024. Folks just call it Justice Orchard now. Let me ask you, if you'd been in my shoes, would you have dug or just taken the money and walked away? Drop a comment. Share your own story. Sometimes the only way to fight corruption is to stand your ground, get your hands dirty, and dig until the truth sees daylight. You might just find underneath all that mess something worth saving.